The core flaw in modern capitalism is physical distance. The people who own a public company rarely are the people who actually run it. You might buy a share of stock, but you are not the one managing the factory floor or negotiating the supply contracts. This separation creates a vacuum. The executives running the day-to-day operations have their own personal incentives, which do not always align with the people who provided the capital. Economists refer to the financial and operational friction between these two groups as agency costs. It is the money lost when managers prioritize their own interests over the owners. For 3 centuries, corporate law has tried to bridge this gap. We constructed massive structures of oversight, independent boards of directors, external audit firms, and specialized proxy advisors, all designed to keep a watchful eye on management. Yet we are applying a sluggish, analog solution to a hyper-speed global market. While capital moves across the world in milliseconds, traditional corporate governance relies on quarterly meetings, manual audits, and backward-looking reports. We rely entirely on a network of expensive human intermediaries to act as the ultimate check on corporate power. And as the market routinely shows us, these manual checkpoints consistently fail to prevent institutional collapse. The first specific failure is the monitoring problem. Executives are compensated based on short-term stock performance, encouraging massive risks. If the bet pays off, they collect a large bonus. If it fails, shareholders absorb the losses, while executives keep their salaries. Compounding this is the trap of information asymmetry. The board of directors is legally obligated to monitor the executives, but the board only meets a few times a year, and the review data is prepared and filtered by those exact same executives. This chart shows profits from Enron insider stock transactions leading up to its 2001 bankruptcy. While official reports showed a healthy enterprise, executives quietly cashed out tens of millions of dollars. The board, relying on paper reports, caught none of the internal fraud until it was too late. When a board fails, the owners are supposed to step in. But a modern public company has millions of dispersed retail shareholders. It is simply too expensive and complicated for an individual investor holding 50 shares to investigate accounting fraud, coordinate with millions of other owners, and launch a campaign to fire a bad CEO. This is the collective action problem. The legal ideal paints a picture of a vibrant shareholder democracy, where owners actively vote to steer the ship. But the documented reality is rational apathy. Because a single retail vote carries almost zero weight, the most logical financial decision for a small shareholder is to ignore the proxy ballot entirely. These 3 flaws show that our current oversight mechanisms do not cure the gap between ownership and control. They act as regulatory theater, theatrical bandages covering a terminal structural disease. Distributed ledger technology provides a structural replacement for this failing system. It establishes a decentralized architecture for human organization, where the ledger itself serves as a verifiable record that exists outside the control of any single executive. Peer-to-peer networks allow shareholders to participate directly in the life of the company. When owners can securely verify their own stakes and cast their own votes over a network, traditional intermediaries like proxy advisors and transfer agents become technically obsolete. Every executive action, every corporate expense, and every compensation decision is recorded on an immutable ledger. Once a block of data is verified by the network, it is locked chronologically in public view. It cannot be altered or erased by management. This absolute transparency shatters the information asymmetry trap. Executives can no longer filter, delay, or massage financial data in the weeks leading up to a board meeting because the raw data is visible to the entire network in real time. By utilizing this technology, a company makes a significant structural transition. It moves from an architecture that requires trusting the integrity of human intermediaries to an architecture that trusts cryptographic math. Empirical proof that complex entities can operate entirely on code already exists in the form of DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organizations. These structures operate without physical headquarters, traditional executives, or a conventional board of directors. DAOs replace human discretion with smart contracts. These are self-executing programs that trigger automatically when specific pre-coded conditions are met. If an executive tries to authorize a payment outside the approved parameters, the code simply rejects the transfer. There is no human interpretation, no favors, and zero room for manipulation. Shareholders no longer have to wait for an annual proxy meeting to vote retroactively on actions that happened 9 months ago. Smart contracts can enforce dynamic capital allocation and monitor compliance in real time, automatically locking or releasing executive compensation based strictly on verified performance. By automating oversight and enforcing rules mathematically, DAOs represent the first functional software update to a highly defective 17th century corporate operating system. This technology is not without friction. Early blockchain experiments show that even with frictionless access, retail shareholders can still succumb to voter apathy. Furthermore, code is dangerously rigid. When unpredictable edge cases arise that the original programmers did not anticipate, a smart contract's inability to adapt can create major operational hurdles. However, the friction of adopting new technology must be weighed against the catastrophic costs of maintaining the status quo. Companies like WeWork masked deep operational rot behind the illusion of progressive corporate culture, exploiting the exact same gap between ownership and control that has plagued the market for decades. This warning message from FTX illustrates the endgame of opaque management. The collapse was not a failure of decentralized technology. It was the direct symptom of an absent centralized board and a management team operating entirely in the dark. Code cannot cure basic human greed. Bad actors will always seek ways to extract value for themselves. But an immutable, automated ledger permanently destroys the informational shadows where that opportunism currently hides. The foundational technology to replace the traditional board of directors exists today. Corporate law and global markets now face a binary choice: evolve the infrastructure of how companies are governed, or wait for the next inevitable failure.